Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at Deepin 23 Alpha. This is the alpha release, and it is not ready for prime time, so you don't want to install this as a daily driver. However, this is going to give us a sneak peek into what's kind of new with 23, if anything looks different and all that. I'm really curious to see what Deepin Alpha 23 is like. According to the webpage here, over in the right-hand menu there, it looks like Deepin 20.7 is actually the current release. 23 is quite a step up from 20.7. I really just want to just jump in here and take a look and see what the UI is like and if there's any kind of differences here. On the website, it's showing that a new world is coming. So Deepin 23 Alpha has just been officially released here recently, and they call it the first root community of desktop OS in China. Deepin Community. So yeah, that's kind of a fancy name for Deepin Community. And so Deepin 23 Alpha is the second version of Deepin 23. So it's based on a new flow design concept, and Deepin 23 presents you with fashion UI interfaces and considerate interactive experiences in terms of functions. It actively responds to the feedback from Deepin users, develops and integrates many practical functions to meet user requirements in different scenarios. And what's more, it fixes a large number of usage issues, pre-installs some Linglong applications, and comprehensively improves system compatibility and smoothness. Oh, you're welcome to try it. All right. So Linglong applications, I'm not 100% sure what that is. I do recall reading a little bit about Linglong and their development a while back, and it seemed to be like an application format that they're developing in. Kind of reminds me of the KDE format. It might actually be a spin-off of it. In KDE, in the newest version, you can separately theme your window separately from your desktop. So, you can have a dark theme in your application that's open, but maybe a light theme overall in your desktop. And Linglong kind of reminds me of the same thing, but as far as the format goes, and so it's probably kind of a variation of the KDE Windows windowing system or whatever. So anyway, I'm not going to get myself back too much into a corner on Linglong because, like I said, I don't know a whole lot about it. But overall, there are improvements here. Looks like they improved the flow design in Image Viewer, gave it some extra functionality, and so that looks interesting. And same with Album. And of course, these are Linglong apps, as they call it, as well, which are the defaults in Deepin. And you can display photos by year, month, and day, is all supported, and so forth, display modes, and so forth. Our system installer, backup and restore, music, image viewer, album. And then they go on to kind of touch on Linglong apps, but I don't really think they tell you much about them. The pre-installed music viewer, music, image viewer, and album apps are in Linglong format, and their UI is in a flow design style. So I guess you could interpret that any way you want, but the KDE UI is kind of in a flow design style too. So that's why I think they're probably just kind of maybe respinning the UI, the KDE UI, and just kind of making it their own. And then it goes on to list a whole list of bug fixes and so forth. But I'm just going to get straight to the download because I want to check this out. So here's our download links. And also I got the links in the description below. So you're good there. And I'm going to just go ahead and click on this, download this baby, load it in, and I'll be right back. Hey, and here we are. So this is our boot menu here for Deepin 23. And as you can see, it's starting off with kernel 5.18. So that's a big plus. And by the way, this is based on Debian. I think Debian's stable, if I remember correctly. And so, yes, 5.18 is the default kernel, and then you can also boot to 5.15. So that's something that's a little bit different than the previous versions. I think you were at 5.15 and 5.13 and 16. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But anyways, we got a much newer kernel that we can boot to. So that's kind of cool, I see. And also, I just want to show you something real quick. I just pressed the tab key because when you boot this up, it'll take you right into the installer and then you can install. But if for some reason you want to preview this in live mode first, I'm just going to show you real quick a little trick that will get you into a live desktop mode if you want to kind of preview it directly from your USB stick before you install it. And so if you want to do that, I'm going to show you how to do that. And then I'll reboot again and get right back to this menu, and we'll just run the installer instead of doing it from the live desktop. But just for your reference, I pressed the tab key, and then that opened up the little editor down here on the bottom. You can now see the boot parameters here that are all kind of laid out. And so you got all this stuff going on, and my cursor's here at the end. And so what I want to do is I want to arrow over to my left. So I'm going to use my arrow keys, and you can see the little cursor moving down there. And where it says ZH_CN UTF-H, I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to change it to English. So I'm going to keep the UTF-H though, and type in EN_US. US is being my locale. And so now it'll boot into English. And then where it says overlay CD installer, I'm going to just delete all that, or not overlay, but just installer. So, okay, now I deleted that. And so deleting that and changing the locale should do the trick. Now all I have to do is just press enter. And then instead of going to the installer, it should put me right into the live mode. And so here we got our Deepin splash screen. And if I did that right, then we'll be seeing a live environment here really soon. Okay, and it looks like we're getting like an X window there. So there we go. Cool. And here's our live environment. So that's all there is to it, really, to get into the live environment. You just got to know the little trick, because they don't really give you an option, at least none that I know of. And here's our fashion mode, efficient mode. So here you can kind of choose your bar, your bottom panel, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, that's just a quick sneak peek there into the live mode. And then, of course, there's our menu, our application launcher. And so it looks really gorgeous. So that hasn't changed too much. I'm liking what I see here. Cool. So that just makes me want to install it. I'm just going to close that. And as you can see, the Deepin installer is up in the upper left-hand corner there. However, I'm just going to reboot this instead, and then we'll just kind of do it the traditional way for those who don't want to go to the trouble of doing that trick. So typically what happens is when you pop in your USB stick and you boot, it's going to boot up here back to that menu where we were before, and then you just hit enter, and then it's going to bring us into an installer. And so that's what we ought to be seeing here most any second now. And here we go. So here's our installer. And as you can see, by default, it's in Chinese. So we want to click the English if you happen to be in an English-speaking country. And then I have read and agreed to the user terms, EULA. And then here we got our full disk recommended. And I'm just going to go with all the defaults here. You also have custom and advanced or other options. And then here you can even use a restore file. So you have the ability in Deepin to create a backup image file. And then you can just restore from your image file, your own image file from an existing install. So that's really cool. But let's go ahead and select the full disk. And then I'm going to click next. Actually, I got to select the disk first. And then we'll come down here and I'll just hit next. And there we go. That was easy. So now it's showing that we're ready for the install, and it's just going to erase over everything that's on my disk, so it'll all be gone. Press start installation, and now we're ready to configure the computer and install everything. So I'm going to let it do its thing. I'm going to hit pause, and then when it's all done, I'll be right back. We'll see how it went. Okay, and it's installed successfully, so that's all good. And so I'm just going to hit reboot now, and then it should ask for some more information after we reboot. So here we go. Okay, and so now we are rebooting, and it's asking for a username. So we're going to go ahead and complete the install here, and then just put in password, and then retype the password, hit next. And it's telling me my password is lame. Weak. Well, that's okay. I like weak password. Nothing like living on the edge. Wow, there we go. Okay, so now we're in. And so looks like everything went fine. I'm just going to log in here. And then we should be seeing a desktop. And there it is. Nice. So here we are. It looks like fashion mode is activated by default. And here's our Deepin welcome screen. Looking good. Wow. I'm going to hit next here. And so here we can choose from fashion mode or efficient mode. And so that's for our dock. This is the efficient mode, which kind of looks more traditional. If you hit the menu, it still has the big layout there like GNOME, but you can also shrink that in the upper left corner of that menu. And then here in fashion mode, that's kind of what I like. That's the default. I'm going to kind of stick with that, I think. I'll select that, and as you can see, now the panel is raised up a little bit from the bottom, and it's kind of changed its layout a little. So that's kind of cool. And I'm going to keep effect mode. If you use normal mode, then it kind of turns off the effects. And if you have kind of a slow computer, normal mode is not a bad way to go because it kind of turns off all the transparencies and the other effects that might hog your CPU. So that's good if you got, kind of a lightweight computer. And then here we got our icon themes, and I like the bloom, so I'm just going to stay with that. And then here's our panel items. I'm going to open up our settings here. Just bring that up so you got quick, easy access to settings. Then we got show desktop, and then our main menu. And then it's showing updates are available, so I'm just clicking that and just going to kind of let that run its thing there. Down here we got our volume size, wired network, and I'm just GTFing out of the way here real quick. And so the next thing, this kind of closes our extra icons. Then we have our grand search, the grand search. And so here, if you want to look for maybe an app or something, you can type it in here. Video, and nothing there. So if I go to default, okay, maybe that's a grand search for settings. I don't know. I was thinking it was going to bring up the video player. I guess the video player is called movie. Okay, that's why. So anyways, I'm going to just do the screenshot here. I just kind of selected that real quick. And I was so busy yapping, I forgot to tell you that was down on the toolbar there on the panel below. So here by default, it'll save a screenshot to your clipboard, and then you can paste it into a document. But if you'd rather just save it to your drive, you can just select a folder here and then hit your check mark, and then it'll actually physically save it to your drive. And then you can either click view or open folder. And here it's showing you that it created a folder called screenshots in your pictures directory. And there's our screenshot. So if we open that up, there's our image viewer of that section of file manager that we opened up there. So that's kind of cool. And just as an FYI, if you look right there, that's where our screenshot utility is on the panel here right below me. So that's what I clicked. I kind of aced through that really quick, but that's where that is actually. And that opens up your screenshot utility. And then down here we got our keyboard settings here. So this will open up our virtual keyboard. And so then you can go ahead and type from there, and that'll open it up right from there. And then we got our shutdown, reboot, lock, and log out. Very good. And then here's our calendar app. And so beautiful calendar. I remember the calendar is always really nice and Deepin. And so here you can even classify your event types. These are some presets here, work, life, and other. So if I just wanted to kind of put in maybe a work-related event reminder, let's say on the 17th, I'm going to add a new event here, and I'm going to keep it under work there, and I'm going to type in meeting with the big boss. All right, the big boss. And so here we can even create our own custom event type if we want, but I'm just going to go with work because I got to meet with the big boss, even though I don't have one, but All right, so now we got our meeting here, and you can even see when you highlight, mouse over it, meeting with the big boss is right there. So big red letters, you can't miss it. And that was like for an all day schedule. So that'll always just kind of be there all day, kind of remind me. Of course, I forgot to put the time down. So I'll have to call the big boss back and say, what time was that meeting again? And then get yelled at. Oh, I'm glad I don't have bosses anymore. Jeez. Anyway, onward and upward. So here's our notification center. And as you can see, we got one notification in there that let us know that we took a screenshot there earlier. And I just cleared all those by hitting that whisk broom. And then over here, we got our apps. We got our browser, our file manager, the album, music, calendar. And so that's what I just had open before. And there's our event still there. Nice. And then our control center, which is right here. Very cool. And then moving over here, we got our show desktop. So when you hit that, then it minimizes everything, and hit it again, they come back. And then here's all our installed apps. So our file manager, our music player, movie player, screen capture, which is we did earlier, image viewer, album, draw, computer. So if we open that up, it opens our file manager and just kind of shows up all our my computer settings, so to speak, if you're a Windows user. And then we have our trash, system monitor. And here, I always like the system monitor in Deepin. It's really nice. It's a really nice layout of the CPU usage and so forth, showing that some package cache was wiped. I think that was from our update there. And then our services. So we got a whole list of those running. And we can even change our theme. Nice. Within the app itself. So that's kind of a KDE feature, but I think the Deepin people kind of consider that a Linglong feature too. But if I hit dark theme, then it'll theme this dark just for this app, which is kind of cool. And then you can light theme it. Then popping over here, we got our system monitor, tray, control center, FC ticks. So these are a bunch of things that are just kind of running right now in the background and not so background like the file manager. And then here we got our applications, and looks like the file manager is like using the most CPU. I mean, the system monitor itself. So if I close that, we free up more. And I killed the process. I just wanted to see what terminate process would do. And so when I click that, it actually kind of brought up a xkill cursor. So when it does that, you just put your cursor over the application you want to terminate, and then it'll get it out for you. So that's kind of cool. I never really noticed the xkill kind of interface from a GUI before, so that's cool. I like that. And then here we have our printer. So if you want to add printers, you can do that right here, and it'll just detect one. I don't have a printer hooked up to this particular machine here, so it's not going to detect anything, but printer detection is quite easy in Deepin, as long as you got a Linux compatible printer, of course, which is most printers. And then here we got our calculator, and of course we can select different modes, so we can have a scientific calculator for you big brains out there. And then what the other one was, programmer. So here, that's pretty handy if you're a programmer and you're like really working on some low-level stuff, and you got hex, decimal, octal, and bin. So here's our hex. So we got A through F there. So you got your 16 base, and then back to normal. And then of course you can theme this as well separately, like some of the other apps. So you can make that a dark theme for this calculator, and now it is a dark theme, even though the rest of the UI is light. Cool. And moving on, here's our package installer. That's our GDebi for installing DEB. And here's our disk utility. And by the way, you can just double click on a DEB file and it'll launch that anyway. It's associated. And then here is kind of our disk utility. And so it's kind of giving a layout of all our different partitions. So that's pretty nice if you're kind of a geeky techie guy or gal. And when I say guy, I always mean that generically, by the way. So that applies to both genders, or all three, however you want to look at it. And then we have, what else do we got here? So let's jump over to our second page, and there's our welcome screen, backup and restore utility, our browser. So if we open that up, not sure what that is. Maybe a reskinned version of Firefox, or maybe Chromium, or maybe it's neither. Let's go into About here and just kind of take a look. So it looks like it's, they just call it browser. Made possible by the Chromium open source project. So this is based on Chromium. I would say it's probably just a reskinned version of Chromium. They just kind of rebranded it and gave it an original name like browser. So yeah, cool. And then we got document scanner, downloader. There's the Gomuku game. Input was where we were. Laptop, there's Lian Khan. And we have LibreOffice. We got our base and our calc, draw, and impress, which is like equivalent to PowerPoint. And then writer. So let's open up calc here and take a look at this. And this looks nice. It's themed well. It's all kind of working there. Of course, we're in a light theme right now. And we're running version 7.4.2.3. So that seems quite fairly recent there. Glad to see that. And then back to the second page again. The writer, onboard settings, our color picker. That's handy if you're like developing things, or you're an artist and you want to get some colors right off your desktop somewhere. It even magnifies your area, so it's easier to pick out the exact color that you want on some of those pictures that might have a gradient. So that's really cool. That's a very nice picker there. And I ain't talking nose picking either. And then user feedback and their Deepin forum link. So yeah, a lot of nice essentials there in our menu. And then back here, if we go to accounts, we can kind of change our avatar. And I like the kitty there. That looks kind of cool. I'm going to do that. And so now we got display. I'm back in my settings, by the way, our control center. And there you can adjust your brightness here under display and set your resolution and all that good stuff. Deepin ID probably doesn't apply to most people. Here we have our default applications. So right now we only have browser installed, but if we were to install like Firefox or something, or the Chromium, we could change our default, our picture viewer. Then we have personalization. So this is nice. Here we can kind of change our theme instantly to dark theme. And as you can see, we have blue accents. So if we want to change our accent color, we can go over here and make it like a pink accent or orange, or we could go with yellow, green, and I like the green personally. I might stick with that. Then we have kind of a cyan, a light blue, dark blue, purple, and gray for you guys that just like gray. But I'm going to go with this, red. And there's our window effect. I never did turn that back on, so you can turn on your window effect right there. That's where you can do that. Now I got the opacity back in. So we can make our transparency like all the way so it's completely transparent or completely opaque, or just have it in the middle somewhere. I think by default it was like 0.4 if I remember right. So I'll just kind of stick it back there to stay consistent. And then here we have our scale for our window minimizing, magic lamp, which is pretty typical there for KDE. And this is based on KDE. And then our rounded corners, which doesn't affect the panel on the bottom, but it affects the windows that are open. So if you want to make it less rounded, now it's quite square by putting it all the way, and then making it large, now you got very rounded corners. So that's kind of cool. And by default, it was in the middle there at medium. Great. And then network. So under our wired network, our network settings, we got wired. And then here we got our notification settings. Then we have our sound settings here, which are always nice. And then we have our input settings. If you want to change anything here, which typically I probably wouldn't myself. You got automatic noise suppression here. And this is your sound, by the way. And then we got our sound effects. And so by default, your boot up and shutdown is turned off, which I'm glad. They're kind of annoying. I don't really like boot up sounds. Deepin used to have those on by default, which I always thought was a pain, and they weren't easy to turn off. You couldn't find them in the beginning. But now it's all easy. We got all this stuff, and we got all these different sound effects here. And of course, our boot up sound effect. So it's kind of neat to listen to all by itself. It's just not fun to hear when you're booting up. And the shutdown. So yeah, a kind of nice little melodies there. And then here we got our line out and line in for our input devices. Here we got our clock settings, and it looks like by default it's set at Beijing time, an 8-hour difference, which if I want to come over here, I could maybe just click the Eastern time zone, and 8 hours doesn't sound right. That actually should be 12 hours difference between the East Coast of the US and Beijing. However, whatever. So I'm going to hit confirm there and just kind of log in there or authenticate. And now we have our clock settings, and that looks more consistent with the local time, 1506. So that is correct. We are good there. It's still showing Beijing GMT there in our settings, but maybe if I click away and back in, nope, still there. So I don't know why that didn't update. Theoretically, if I restarted it, probably would be updated. Then our 24-hour time, and then our time format. And we got to bear in mind that this is a beta or an alpha version, so things aren't going to be perfect. So we got our long time and our short time. I don't know how that reflects down on the panel. When you hit long time, it's not really updating on the panel. So I don't know if I'm missing something, or if maybe that's just a feature that's not quite wired in yet, because again, we're in the alpha version here. So in the final version, I'm assuming that probably when you select long time, there'll be a way that should be reflected down there in the panel, or at least have a toggle of some sort. So yeah, moving on. Here we have our general our power settings here. And then we got our mouse settings. So if you're a lefty, you can turn that on and declare yourself a lefty, and it'll reverse your buttons. Then we have our double click test, and that's kind of cool. When you double click your mouse here, then the little kitten pops up, double click it again, he hides. And so that's really cool. I like that. One of my favorite mouse tests, I think, on a distro. Then we have our mouse acceleration, pointer speed, and natural scrolling option. And then here we got our keyboard input, and I would keep all those. I like the numeric keypad on and the cap lock notification. Then we have our language settings and shortcuts. So these are our keyboard shortcuts. So if you want to maybe have some different keyboard shortcuts, or if you want to know what they are, otherwise you can change them in here or add your own. And I just brought up the terminal using Control-Alt-T, and so that was working. I saw that in the keyboard shortcuts, and since I'm here, I'm going to do a uname. So let's do uname -R, and our kernel is 5.18 17-AMD, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, that is consistent with the boot up menu. Glad to see that. Cool. I'm going to close that, go to updates. And so these are our system update settings here. And I probably just would stick with all the defaults on there. Personally, I wouldn't need to change anything. And then, of course, we have our system info that kind of gives us the info on our edition, which is a community 23. The non-community is known as UOS. And then we have our EULA and our privacy policy. And then, of course, our general settings here for our boot menu. So here it has a nice splash screen, but you can also put a startup delay in there if you want to set a delay on your startup. And then your theme. So if you want to turn off your theme, you can go in here and then just authenticate. And then it'll go back to a black screen. But personally, I like having the theme there. So I'm just going to leave that on. Oh, and I forgot something too. It was under appearance, I think. Yeah, I did leave something out there. So I'm going to slide this over real quick. Go back in our control center. Back up under, I think it was maybe personalization or display. No, personalization. Okay, so in here, I forgot to click on these other tabs. So here you can change your icon theme. And so they got a lot of different ones. Vintage, that looks kind of cool. Wow, that does have a vintage look. And I kind of like that in a strange sort of way. That's kind of cool. I would probably actually use those for a while if this was my daily. It's got a really interesting look, kind of a deco kind of feel to it, I guess. And then we have our Bloom Dark, and that's right here. And I really love the Bloom icons there. I think those are really nice. That really stands out to me. Then our cursor theme. So if you want to change your cursor, you come down here and get kind of like this blue theme or the Adwaita. So if you like the Adwaita over the Bloom, then you can choose that. And then here we can set our fonts, default fonts and our size and all that. And then here we got our dock settings. So as you can see, it's in fashion mode right now. And here you can change it to efficient like we did in the beginning. Then we got our location. So I just switched it to top. You can push it up there. And then you could even change it to effect mode afterwards. And then it kind of looks like a traditional top bar. So that's kind of cool. And then you can put it over on the left if you kind of like the Ubuntu style left hand or the GNOME look. And then fashion mode would rearrange it like that. And then back to efficient mode. And then your status, I like to keep it at keep shown instead of hiding it, but you can hide it there. And I'm going to put this back on the bottom, and now we're back on the bottom in fashion mode. And then here you can adjust your size by sliding this slider. You can make it really big, really tiny, or just have it in the middle. And I think it was right about there by default. I remember right, give or take a pixel or two. And then our plugin area. So these are all the items that correspond to the panel down here. So if you want to turn any of these off, then they'll disappear from your panel. Or if you click one like that, your system monitor appears because I checked it. That was off by default. So that's where you can kind of pick and choose some items that are in your default area here. Turn off your onboard keyboarding if you never use that. So that'll kind of free up some space there. And then here we have our date time. And that's probably not something I would turn off because I kind of like having the clock down there. So I think that covers everything in our control panel. Cool. So now I feel like we covered it all. I almost forgot those appearance settings. Jeez. I'm glad I reminded myself. Now on our right-click menu on our desktop, if we go here, we can adjust our icons here. So we can make them bigger if we want a large one, or we can right-click. And under icon size, we could go back to small. That was the default. Actually, I think that wasn't. Yeah, I guess it was. And then here we got our desktop setting, or a desktop option. Oh, I just hit organize desktop. That's kind of cool. Looks like you can sort your icons by name or categories and stuff like that. That's kind of cool. So here we got our desktop options, and we can organize by type here, apps, documents, pictures, and all that. And then our display size. So here it's showing our organized by type. And when I went up there and hovered over, it was showing apps and kind of a blurred tab. And then here you can kind of change your size there of your icons. But that's kind of cool. So apps, Deepin Forum is classified under apps here, and you got that nice fuzzy little designator there. So that's kind of cool. And if you turn that off, then the little menu thingy goes away. And so that's nice. Stuff that I'd never noticed before. Kind of cool. And then if we right click, we go down here, we got our display settings. of course, and that takes us into our control panel where we were before, and it's like a little shortcut to our display settings if you want to adjust your brightness or your resolution, refresh rate, and so forth. And then I've come down here to wallpaper screensaver. So let's take a look at this. Nice. I always liked the wallpaper selector in Deepin. I always thought it was really cool. And then here we can also select screensavers. Wow. I don't remember seeing this before in Deepin, so this might be something new, relatively, maybe. And there's our flying toasters. Cool. That takes me back to the old Mac days. And then our Galaxy. I kind of like the Galaxy one there. And the Earth. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really a real screensaver person, but, these are kind of cool. If I was going to do a screensaver, I would probably choose a few of these. I like it. The little vector animation there. Pretty cool. And more galaxies colliding. Nice. And then, of course, we got over here, we can set our time to activate our screensaver. And right now it's set to never. So the screensavers are off. And you can also have a password to lock screen it if it goes into it. So let's go back to our wallpaper. And wow, that's a beautiful one there. That's kind of a contender already. And then here we got another background. So that kind of looks like a volcanic muddy area there. And there's a cool Deepin logo branded software. And a nice desert scape, kind of reminds me of Mojave on a Mac. And then looks like Mount Everest. Cool. And there's another desert scene. That'll make you thirsty. Beach. And then we got another branded wallpaper. Beautiful. And then I don't know where that is. That's quite nice. And I remember seeing this on some of the KDE wallpaper, some of these. So yeah, very nice. And the selector makes it really easy to just kind of scroll through. That kind of reminds me even more of the Mojave desktop there, Mac Mojave. And yeah, a lot of choices. Wow, that's a tough one. Ooh, that looks really cool. That's a beautiful picture there. I think I'm going to go with that. I like it. I got to slide back down. And then over here we got our selector here for our workspaces. So we can go to desktop 2 or back to desktop 1. So that's quite nice. The multitasking view. Cool. And then here we have our file browser, our file manager. And so it looks like our folders have default things in here. Like here we have a sample video. So that's kind of cool. So we can kind of sample our videos and other media files right off the bat, just to kind of get a feel of how the players work. And that's looking quite nice, actually. I think the Deepin movie player has some VLC libraries that it runs off of and has all the codecs and everything, which is great. And then here's our music player, and it's got a little MP3 in there, another cool thing. And so we'll close that, and that corresponds to that guy down there. Excellent. And I closed it, but it stayed open down there in the panel. So as you can see, it's kind of open there. So I'm just going to right click on it. That's where it is on the panel. And just hit exit. And that'll actually close our player there. Cool. And I don't think the sound came out through my channel. So it was actually making sound, but I don't think that channel was activated, my OBS Studio. So sorry about that. But it was working, and here you can kind of see info on it. So yeah, nice player, actually, overall. I'm just going to close that again. Then here we have pictures, and of course we got our default pictures, which is all the wallpapers we were scrolling through. And of course, you can right-click on those and select Save as Wallpaper as well. This is our image viewer, so we could just kind of go through all of them if we wanted to. And then back here we have our screenshots folder, which was automatically generated by our screenshot software. And that's the screenshot we took at the beginning of the video. Nice. There you go. And then, of course, that's a shortcut to our Deepin forum, and that'll open up in browser. And so here we got all kinds of information, and it's taken us directly to the Deepin 23 alpha as our first listing there in our forum. So that's nice. And then our Deepin homepage, very cool. So you got quick, easy access from here. Very nice. And I also want to note that you got to remember there is no software center installed on here. So when you go in here and if you're wanting to install some software, it's not really wired into any real repositories yet. So you don't have any software that you can just download and install. And yes, that's because it is an alpha. It's really, those features aren't enabled yet. That's why I was saying you don't want to use this as a daily driver yet. And here, right on their website, I just highlighted it here. This is an alpha release for testing purposes only. The final release of Deepin 23 should take place in the first quarter of 2023. Yahoo! So I'll be there. Nice. So Deepin Alpha, I think, is looking promising already. I'm kind of excited to kind of maybe get this on a machine once it's fully wired in. I'm assuming the next stage will be a beta and then probably some release candidates, and then we'll have our official release. But I think the official release is on track to be a really cool looking distro. I'm really getting excited about this. So even though at this point in this early alpha stage, I can't really say that I put it on a computer and just start using it, because yes, it's got more work to do on it. But you know, for a project that really hasn't even come close to being finished yet, it really is quite solid. And nothing crashed on me, no jittery bugs or anything like that. So I'm really glad to see that. I know oftentimes in other type distros, it's not uncommon for things to crash and freeze and everything else when you're on an early alpha release and taking a sneak peek at stuff. So to see this run as stably as it has, I think that's really, really impressive. And it just kind of goes to show the work that's gone behind the Deepin project and how much has gone into it. And yeah, you want to keep in mind that this is a community project. So this is different than the UOS, which is the Chinese official version, which is actually a paid desktop. And there's a lot of people that kind of, want to criticize Deepin because it's the CCP desktop that's going to spy on you. This is a community version and everything is completely open source and transparent. So that to me is really just a non-issue. And if you're really kind of the paranoid type, then this probably really isn't the distro for you. But, for the rest of us casual users, this is really a cool option to consider. So I'm going to keep an eye out here for Deepin 23 and just kind of watch its progress as it goes. And sometime in the first quarter, so I'm guessing maybe by spring, they might have the official release of 23 out. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing that official release and just kind of comparing it to 20.7, which is out now. So that's kind of a jump there from 20.7 to 23. So I'm assuming with this, I forgot what they call it already, with this long format, I'm interested to see how that progresses as well, how it evolves. And with that, I think I probably covered everything, at least everything I can for an alpha. I really hope this review was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs sideways. Wait a minute, thumbs up. And hit subscribe while you're at it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.